Okay, so hello everyone at Beyond the Dojang. Today I am joined with Richard Ahlers SBN from the USA Moo Duk Kwan, and he will be sharing with us what I would like to call a holistic view on martial arts training. And this is quite exciting because it's the first time we're actually doing a video interview. So first of all,
Yeah.
thank you so much, sir, for
Thank
taking
you.
part.
Thanks for having me.
I'm so
Appreciate it.
excited. So if you could start off, please, with how did you get into martial arts and discover Subakdo? What's your background?
So I started in 1985, and back then it was called Tangsudo Moo Duk Kwan. The story goes as such. My dad served in the military in Korea, and when we were of age, I must have been around five-ish, around that time. My parents were looking for martial arts schools to get us into. And back then, the children's programs, the intention of children's programs were probably a little different, but there was still the same kind of core aspects like discipline and respect and confidence. And what drew my dad to Tangsudo Moo Duk Kwan was that it was Korean, and he knew the culture, and he understood the culture, and because he was kind of involved in it being over in Korea. And he said, I think this is where they should go because I understand it, I know about it. I value them. I value their culture. I know that's going to be good training, and so that's actually how I came about training in Tangsudo Moo Duk Kwan. So many years later, I don't even know what 40 years later. Not even 35, 36 years later, I'm still doing it.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So thinking back to when you first started martial arts, how has your approach changed, or your approach to training has changed since when you began?
Yeah, it's evolved a lot. When I look back, I think about that question, there's almost just, durations of time where it's changed. And so at my very early stages, and some people may have trained at that time, the early training was very hard, even for children. It's not what you see today. There was a lot more discipline and a lot more intensity, and you were training with adults. So the training back then was very hard. It was rigorous, a lot of cardiovascular involvement, right? Calisthenics, and very little education around mental facets, like nothing beyond just, oh, you're going to build confidence or mental discipline. It was very much physical. And even in my teens and 20s, a lot of my training at that time was about sparring. It was about competitions. It was, at that time, again, it was semi-contact. I even did full contact for a short duration of time outside of the organization. But the training back then was just very aggressive. And about maybe, I want to say the last 10 years, maybe a little bit more than that, my training shifted because I started to realize and started tapping into this other level of information. And when we look at how Kwanjanam now teaches, he sprinkles a lot of that in there, but it's the mind-body connection, the mind-body breath connection, and how everything works in unison, holistically, kind of what you alluded to in the beginning of the interview. And so over the last decade, I've really started evolving my training from less to be about combative, while still being interested in the defense mechanisms of what we do. I think we need to keep the martial and martial art, but understanding a way now in the last 10 years to develop the body and train in a way that it gives more livelihood and longevity to our training, and also provides benefits to what we're doing physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And also, one other thing was my father got very sick many years ago. He came down with Parkinson's disease. The neurological component for me has been something that I've been studying over the years to try to understand, why is Tai Chi effective? Why is yoga effective? Why is martial arts effective for neurocognitive dysfunction? What's the science behind it? What's the data on it? And so again, those kind of things have morphed my training over the years to really start thinking about the body as a unit or a vessel that we are utilizing through life, and then how to adapt that into an experience. And mine happens to be martial arts at its primary, right? So I think that's kind of answering your question, but it's really changed over time. I really don't care about competitions anymore. They're great for people for confidence building stuff, but as a practitioner for me now, where I really focus over the last maybe 3 years or 3 to 5 years, is really tapping into the science behind movement and connectivity and harmony, and becoming a lifestylist of martial arts, someone that's really understanding the movements and how they work and why they work, what's the science behind them, what are the benefits, and how to do it correctly without hurting ourselves and those kinds of things. So my training's really shifted. And I think for me, I look at my future now, 10, 15, 20 years from now, I actually finally see myself training in my 60s and 70s and not just standing around watching, by practicing this way. So hopefully that answer is a little long-winded, but that's kind of full circle of where I'm at now.
That's fantastic. I mean, what you've touched on right at the end there is really, really interesting as well. It's about training, but to ensure you can train also later on in life. Because
Right.
I guess when you're younger, and me even at this position now, it's hard to anticipate how your body will age and change.
Right.
And you've got to look after it in a smart way. There comes a time where you have to think about it smartly.
Right.
So I'm at actually the age where I need to start thinking smartly of it.
And I was just going to say, all the hard banging and hard contact, I craved it when I was young, because I was like, oh, I want to spar. Forget forms, forget let's just spar. And you're right. When you're young, you're kind of, I don't want to say ignorant, but you're kind of not acknowledging the fact that some of that's going to really affect your body over time if you're wearing and tearing on it. And you see some of those folks that have been very successful in their younger careers, and you look at them now, and they're some of them are in bad shape, and for obvious reasons. There's a lot of that hard banging.
Yeah, so before this interview, we've briefly talked in the past about the holistic view to martial arts training and one's lifestyle. I'm on the start of this journey and you're further in. So what does the holistic view mean to you, firstly? And what does that include on a daily basis?
It's a good question. So my original instructor said this quote, and I'll never forget it. It sticks with me to this day. Treat your body as a shrine. You get one vessel. Treat it kindly. And I'm not saying I've always done that. I'll never stand on a pedestal and say I have. I mean, I was young, I partied, I drank, I ate bad foods, I didn't work out for a while, all this kind of stuff. But to answer your question, holistic means whole body, inside and out, including the mind. And in order to, I think, be your best self, we need to feed that vessel, or feed our body, the proper nutritional information and the proper mental nutritional information. So that means obviously a very healthy diet, minimizing toxicity. So I stopped drinking alcohol over 3 years ago. I decided that was actually hindering me leveling up my martial arts training. It was slowing me down. It was having negative effects on my performance, and I didn't like it. And the thought processes, I mean, just like we'll probably talk a little bit about meditation, but your mental conditioning, when we do Mung Yang in the traditional setting, the majority of people do Mung Yang as just a way to get to the next thing. Oh, I do Mung Yang, I close my eyes and I go to class. But Mung Yang is actually a mental priming. And if you use it correctly, that also has positive effects on the brain and how you perform physically. What you believe is in what you achieve. If I think something negative, then most likely my effects will be negative. So holistically, if we're taking care of our entire mind and body, we will have a better experience in anything we do. And so that's kind of my approach.
So what sort of things would you do on a sort of daily basis that incorporates basically what you would call a holistic view to training into life?
Yeah, sure. So when I can, because this quarantine is obviously threw my regimen off, but when I can, I generally will meditate almost every day if I can get it in, and even if it's for 5 to 10 minutes, even if I pull off in my car somewhere and just take my time to meditate. The other thing I do is breathing techniques. So there's a multitude of different breathing techniques that people can implement in their life. There's box breathing, which is, 4 in, 4 out, that kind of thing. There's like water or whooshing breaths, which is much like in yoga, pranayama, where you kind of have like a kind of a passive breath, and it's kind of a calming white noise. So I do some type of breathing modality throughout the day. And even if I'm just walking around and feel stressed, I just implement those breathing mechanisms. The other thing I do is I do some type of physical training. So whether it's high intensity interval training or functional movement, meaning movement that incorporates the entire body, or I'm doing yoga, or I'm doing primal movement like animal crawls, or those types of things. And that's a daily implementation, as well as some stretching. So I try to get some of those things in. There's not every day I can achieve it with the dynamics we're in now. And another thing is my diet. So I'm pretty strict and disciplined about my diet. We talk about discipline in the martial arts, and that's supposed to spill over into your personal life, right? You're not supposed to just do it while you're training. You're supposed to actually use that for your entire life. So my diet's pretty regimented. I eat a lot of healthy foods, lots of vegetables, green stuff, vibrant fruits. I do not eat a lot of processed foods. I do not eat any conventional farmed foods. I eat only organic, grass-fed, pasture-raised animals. And I believe that, again, when we're talking holistic, and this can get very deep, but I'll share what I can without going too crazy and preachy, is animals have energy. We have energy, plants have energy, and it goes on and on and on. Everything has energy. So the food that we eat, we take on that energy. And the conventional farm foods are not humanely produced. And so we take on the negative energy. So eating properly raised animals in a proper setting, or proper plants that are raised humanely, yields a better benefit for us and keeps us healthy and clean. And the other thing is that diet also then facilitates proper mindset, energy levels, to then go back and do the physical things that I want to do on my training aspect. So those are a lot of things that I incorporate in my daily life. And then community, to be honest, talking about this stuff with people that I actually enjoy talking about it is very healthy, because it sparks ideas for your training and helps you evolve and level up. We should always be seeking another level. We shouldn't be just kind of training to train.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting things that you've they picked out, but I think instead of jumping in and asking you questions about them all, we'll
Sure.
take a kind of a systematic approach to it, just so it's
Sure.
easier for the viewers as well. So first, let's turn to meditation, one of the aspects you were talking about. Could you share what got you interested in meditation, and what would you say is there a specific style of meditation that you adopt?
Sure.
And also the benefits that you feel meditation gives?
So my meditation game has kind of evolved on its own too, and it depends what I feel like for any given day. But the reason why, or the way I came across meditation, was obviously very early on. We were meditating in training, and I knew a little bit about it growing up, and I dabbled with it over the years doing yoga. I've probably been doing yoga now for probably over 10 years. And that was kind of like, having those moments is kind of where I was like interested, when I would notice myself kind of pop into like a theta state, like a very calming state. And I'm like, oh man, that feels so good. Like, I want to get there all the time, because you start to become creative. And so I just started doing digging and got interested in it. And then the other thing is that I live a pretty stressful lifestyle. I'm in sales. It's highly competitive, and you're only as good as what you did today, not yesterday. And so that stress can wear on you, right? You can get overwhelmed. You can start to get into rumination, like starting to overthink things too much, or maybe have a negative vision of what's going to happen. I'm not going to hit my target goals. Oh my God, what if I get fired? Your mind just goes there. And every human being has these panic thoughts. That's why I think we've actually lasted all these years, is because we have a very smart, sharp brain. So again, that being interested in meditation, I wanted to learn how to harness that and not control it, but know how to move past it and not let it consume me, so that I can move forward and be productive emotionally, right, successfully in my career. So I started dabbling in all this stuff. And then what I found was, it was very hard, and I would always recommend this to anybody, very hard to do like just a passive meditation where it's silent. Because if you're not used to that, you're going to have a lot of mind chatter. So I started off with guided meditation. And so I started there, and then I started just doing breath work or body scanning meditations to keep my mind focused. And then from there, I went into silent meditations. And I got to the point where I was actually meditating for 45 minutes to an hour. And I wouldn't even know it was 45 minutes to an hour. It felt like it was 5 minutes. So cool. Like, you can literally let yourself just float for 45 minutes. And that's when you know you really kind of hit a groove. And it's practice. But to also answer your question, why is meditation beneficial? If anything that you should do in life, I would probably say meditate. And the reason why is the brain and its ego operate on its own. And most of the thoughts that we have every day, about 90% of them, are the same thoughts we have every day. We have anywhere from 40 to 55,000, maybe even 60,000 thoughts a day. The majority of them are the same thoughts from yesterday. So when we meditate, we're able to then reprogram or reframe thoughts of the past or experiences of the past or projections in the future. We can then change our perspective on that. And so I started doing this just in my training, right? I didn't try to go big world. I went small and I said, okay, I want to become more flexible. I want to keep my endurance up, all these little things. And I would try to train them in my meditation. And then eventually I started setting bigger goals and bigger goals and bigger goals. And what I was noticing was, which is very weird, they were coming true. And I didn't understand how that was possible. I was like, oh, and then I would go back and, oh, I meditated on that like repeatedly. And my body's now flowing towards that result. It's not like a magic pill where you close your eyes and you dream about it and all of a sudden it comes true. You're priming the brain to then move in that direction, so that the obstacles or the challenges that are in your way for that result almost become non-frictional. They're not, there's no friction anymore. Whereas when you don't believe it and you have to do it, you get halted every time you need to get past an obstacle, and then it doesn't end up coming true. So I got obsessed about that component of meditation. The other thing is again, neurocognitive diseases, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, like my father. I started to realize that there was science proving that meditation can reframe or regroup neural pathways and neurogenesis to keep the brain healthy and stave off disease. So if we start at this age, we are now being able to decrease the potential of becoming ill or having neuro impairment, forgetfulness, absentee memory, motor dysfunction, moving our bodies, right? So that became very important for me because I look at my father and I feel for him, but I don't want to end up in the same position. So meditation is very powerful. It also is really great for anxieties and stress and even just to boost your mood. And I think if I was to get to the core of it, that's what meditation does. It changes your neurochemistry, your neurotransmitters, and your physiological experience. And you could change your state. And your body is a representation of your mind. So when you think of something negative, you're programming that physiology into your body. And that's what becomes tension or stress or rigidity, is actually the mental stress that creates physiological stress. If I was to say anything, my goal is to no longer just teach martial arts. It's to teach people how to become a true martial artist in life, and doing it in these modalities to create a happier, peaceful world of people and really become connected with yourself, really understand yourself physically and emotionally. That's a gift to have as a human being, and we all have it. So that would be my goal.
Yeah, that's a great goal. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because it just gives more of a more layers to the actual martial art journey and the process of being a martial artist, or what a martial artist means. So I'm more supportive of that.
Yes.
So now turning to functional training, you mentioned functional, but you've also mentioned animal movements and ballistic training. Could you introduce to the viewers who might not be familiar with functional training, what does that mean?
Sure. So functional training is almost kind of what it sounds like. It's functional, right? So functional movement, meaning, a lot of times if you're lifting weights in the gym, we do, at least over the years, you see people doing things very static. Everything's static but that one muscle group. Like if I'm doing bicep curls, it's just the arm that's moving. Those are not functional movements necessarily. So functional movements are more whole body experiences or multiple muscle group experiences, squats and lunges and kickouts and mountain climbers and those are also things, by the way, that are also in HIIT, high intensity interval training, which again is functional movement. So anything that really engages or calls for more than one muscle group so that your body's working, in different places at one time. The other thing is like animal movements or animal flows. You've probably seen bear crawls, and people probably do bear crawls as a warm up, but there's more to it. There's all types of animal movement, and there's some that are very advanced that I can't even do that I wish I could do, and maybe 20 years ago I would have done them. But animal movement is very functional because it calls for a lot of muscle groups to move at one time, full body movement. So that could be bear crawls, that could be inchworming, that could be walkouts with your hands and feet, all kinds of different ways to, even gorilla walks right? Or gorilla movement, sideways movement on your hands and feet. So those type of things I also incorporate in training because it helps build core stability and it helps flexibility and joint movement. You know, a lot of times I think people think, oh, if I stretch, then I'm flexible. But actually, you need to move your body to become flexible. Dynamic movement helps move the muscles and tendons and joints in multiple different ways to keep it kind of greased. And so those are different things I think that are functional. That's kind of incorporates functional training, and weights could be part of that. But again, in a presentation where you're moving more than one muscle group.
So how often would you do sort of functional training activities, and could you give a snippet or a flavor of what sort of activities you would do when you do them each week?
Sure. So generally I try to do at least 2 to 3 days of functional training, some more rigorous than others, right? Because I don't want to overtrain or hurt myself. But anything from burpees to jump squats to jump lunges to regular lunges to flowing movements from, you know, a downward dog position into like an upward facing dog position and kind of flowing, sideways crawling, handstands. So I just try to incorporate all these different types of dynamic movements in my training. And sometimes I try new ones out too, you know, whether I do like a plank push-up or a regular push-up and then I kick into like a bear pose and do a bear push-up at the same, you know. So there's just kind of different things like that that I'll incorporate. Jump roping, lots of calisthenics, and then again, a lot of movement that opens up the chest and back and the legs and the quads and things that are really helping kind of balance out the muscle groups. So those are some of the things I'll do. And then again, on the non-intensive days, I'd rather do some more yoga and some stretching and things that are a little bit more passive, and even just outdoor activities. Like it's summertime, so I'll probably get on the paddle board, and paddle board's a great workout. That is functional movement. You're using core stabilization on the water and you're using your arms to row. So you got this rowing movement from side to side. And man, that's like, you want to burn calories and tighten up. That's a great exercise. And it's functional movement because you're engaging your feet, your legs, your stomach and your arms. So those are some things that I do. And then obviously my martial arts training. So some of the traditional movement, you know, forms are actually a great functional movement because they call for your legs and hands and even other parts of your body, your hip, to be moving at the same time. And so again, that's a good functional movement, but a little bit more passive and less intense on your body. And I say forms because if you look at form movement, you know, if you take a piece of a form, like say it's got a jump kick in it and it's got a spinning motion in it and it's got a front stance in it and then a back stance in it and a side stance in it. Well, those are all functional movements because there's runner poses almost in those. There's jumping movements in those. You know, there's turning positions and pivoting in those. So you can make them functional. And again, I think anything you do physically that helps you continue to be physical is functional movement. That's the way that I look at it.
I like your approach to how you interpret forms as that, because I think it could probably help people with that mindset as well. Like when they're doing forms, like this can help me in my, say, day-to-day life because I will be developing these muscles and things like that, rather than just thinking, oh, this is a sequence of moves to do. It switches on a different mindset, I think.
Yeah, and I think like when we're in class, I'll always say, stay low, stay low, stay low. And I don't say that to be annoying, but I say stay low because if you don't stay low, you no longer engage those muscle groups anymore. You're not training them, you're giving up. So yeah, so if you stay in those stances and you're doing kyo chadip, like cross leg stance, and you're doing fronts, yeah, those are dynamic movements that are really good for balance, you know, really good for, you know, stability. And so those transcend into life. Actually, can I add this? At the very basis, we'll go back into neurocognitive diseases. A lot of these folks have problems with instability and balance. Training like this, or even doing forms, helps with balance. If you're going to slip and fall, you're probably going to end up being more agile than if you hadn't done any of those things, and maybe recover from a potential fall risk. So that's just something else to add.
No, that's great. Thanks for sharing that. So the final topic we'll turn to, which you briefly mentioned at the start, is about the area of diet. And this is something that personally means a lot to me, because when I started my fitness journey, for those of you who've not read my story or the blog background behind it, I started as really overweight, very unfit. I used to avoid exercise classes at school And it just got to a stage where at the age of 18, I thought I needed to do something with my life. Otherwise, the older I get, the more chances I have of developing health conditions I could have avoided.
Right.
And along that journey, it was actually quite late in the journey, to be honest. I've been on this journey for about 12 years, but it was later on, it actually clicked to me the value of diet, what you just
Mm-hmm.
eat, not going on a diet, what the media is saying, but yet
Right.
actual diet. And it was
Yes.
just such a, it just hit me, and I was just like, I can't believe it. Like, a lot of this is not how many hours you exercise.
Nope.
Maybe 20% is exercise, but 80% is what you do in the kitchen
That's
or
right.
what you eat. So if you could explore and just share with us your views about diet with training and lifestyle, and
Sure.
what sort of things you do as well, please.
Sure. So I have, by the way, congratulations. That is an awesome story. I have read it. I think
Thank
it's
you.
fantastic, which is also why I was happy to do this interview, because I think like you understand some of the principles behind all this stuff. And I think it's great that you're going to be sharing it on your platform. There is a very deep science to a lot of this, but at the very core of it, you're correct. And I didn't know this for years because I was always an athlete. I was always someone who was doing something. So I never struggled with weight. I never did. Maybe for a short period of time when we had our first little girl, I was eating a little bit too much and drinking too much wine, and I put on a couple pounds. But I never was like extremely overweight. But I always was aware of nutrition. I was always interested in nutrition. I was always interested in how that would benefit us as a person. Like you said, health. I have a lot of health issues in my family: diabetes, MIs, heart attacks, Parkinson's disease, you name it. Right. So I equally did not want to be in that position when I'm 50 or 60. I want to be around for my children, and I don't want to be compromised in any way. And so to answer your question, um, it's about 80 to 90% of it is what you put in your mouth. And what I think people don't realize is well, let's go back to the core of it. Diet to me is like a vacation. It's really good when you start it because you're excited, but eventually the vacation comes to an end. And if you don't, and that's what a diet is, there's a start and an end to it for people. And what you don't realize is if you don't have the mental discipline and the routine, you're going to end up going right back to where you started because it's a diet. Whereas eating really should be a lifestyle choice, just like physical activity should be a lifestyle choice. And so it's really important for us to eat as many real things as we can. So the packaged food industry, and I won't go too deep into this because I can go on for hours about it, but the packaged food industry is very inflammatory. All of those foods are very inflammatory. And what does that mean? Well, it's inflammatory to your system, and that causes disease. So packaged foods and restaurant foods and processed foods and conventional foods are all very inflammatory, and they turn on genetic factors that can make people sick: heart disease, high cholesterol, diabetes, whatever. And so the other part of inflammation is you could be eating things that you think are low sugar and low carbohydrates. And in reality, the inflammation is actually causing weight gain because there's processed chemicals in those foods to make them low sugar, to make them low calorie. And so this is a really important factor for me because it goes back to primal eating. All we need to do, to make it very simple, is eat healthy fruits and vegetables, nuts, if you can eat nuts and you're not allergic to them, and very nice lean protein meats and grass-fed meats and things that are, natural in form. If we start to reach to bags and sodas and sugary drinks and a lot of coffee, those are all inflammatory foods, and you will quickly put on weight. And so here's the really important thing beside all that. I don't know how many people realize that food has a deficit on mood or an increase in mood. So food equals mood, meaning if I eat healthy things, I feel better. If I eat bad things, I feel like crap. If I eat sugary foods and ice creams and sugary drinks, I may feel good for that slight moment when I have that sugar spike, but as soon as the sugar spike drops off and I hit a low glycemic index, I start to feel depressed and moody and irritable, and that's all that food talking. So diet is very integral because it helps us function every day, and it helps us be the best we could be from a performance standpoint, from a mental standpoint. And I'll add this, there's a lot of science around the gut microbiome being the second brain. I don't know if you've heard any of this in your research, like reading a lot of this stuff, but the gut is where it processes everything. And if we're putting in bad information in the gut determines what it's going to send out to the brain and to the extremities of the body. And the gut microbiome is where we build our immunities to things like we're dealing with now, right? Like if we're eating a very healthy diet and we're eating a lot of vitamin C and vitamin D, and you're getting vitamin A, you're getting all these different vitamins from your leafy greens and your omega-3s from your fish, you're building a really strong immunity. But if I'm drinking a lot of alcohol and coffee and eating processed foods, I have a really bad immunity, and my gut determines that based on the food that's going into it. And then again, the neurotransmitter side of it, so serotonin, dopamine, norepinephrine, epinephrine, all those things that are coming for our body to tell us to feel good. If we're not eating the right food, the gut's going to send out, hey, I don't have a lot of this stuff. It's not coming to the brain. There's not a lot there. And the mood crashes. So you're right. So diet is really 90%, 80 to 90% of how to stay lean and how to stay healthy. And if we make any decisions in life to be disciplined about it, should be the diet first. And then what you'll notice is the more clean you eat, the more vibrant you feel, and the more excited you feel to work out, the more clear-headed you are. You have less fogginess and less indecisiveness and all this other stuff, right? And I probably went on my soapbox a little bit too much there, but that's why I think diet is really very important to a martial lifestylist, because we do a lot of things that are physically demanding and even mentally demanding. And if we're not putting in good information, then the result is not going to look good. The other thing is, and I hope I don't insult anybody by saying this, the other thing is that when we get to higher ranks in life, we need to hold ourselves to a higher accountability. And not just because, oh, people are watching, you're wearing a black belt or whatever it is. It's because you've attained that rank and you've worked hard for that. And so you owe it to yourself to continuously take care of yourself and to keep performing at that caliber. And that's what I love to do. I want to inspire people to do that. But I think those are the reasons why diet for me are really important. And you've probably even discovered it yourself. Like you're telling me like, oh my God, I didn't realize all this stuff.
Yeah.
And oh my God, I'm just changing the way I eat and the pounds are shedding off and I feel good. And now I want to work out more and I feel like I want to challenge myself, And yeah, I mean, we've moved so far away from real food. That's what's really happened. We want things easy and convenient. And so there's all these McDonald's and Burger Kings and Subways and fast foods and get it quick, get it in, get it quick, and then go do the other things. When in reality, it should be the other way around. Take your time, find the right things to nourish yourself, and then all the other stuff falls into place because it becomes easier.
Yeah.
So again, that's also why I don't drink alcohol. Alcohol, just to share with people, there's nothing wrong with having a glass of wine. The pros and cons about drinking, wine and whatever. But the reality is, the more wine you drink, the less stamina you have, the less endurance you have, and that's part of your diet, right? So I would advocate limiting the alcohol. It also affects your mood and everything else, but it shouldn't be a staple in your diet. It shouldn't be an everyday thing. Water should be an everyday thing. Tea, those kinds of things. That's good. That's nourishing for the body. So yeah, diet's very important. And I think if I can add one more thing to this, food is information, and foods that are inflammatory are also foods that stress the body. And most illnesses and most conditions in life, even muscle rigidity, are caused from the core of stress. So when we eat things that are stressful to our body, they then in turn create a stressful response. And I'll use caffeine as an example. I don't drink a lot of caffeine anymore. I quit drinking caffeine. I drink decaf once in a while. But caffeine is a stimulant. It actually puts the body in a fight or flight position. It puts us into panic. And so you'll feel like you have rapid breathing, or you may get lightheaded, or you may feel a jolt of energy, and you're like, oh, I want to work out. But it's actually putting your body in a fight or flight response.
Right, yeah.
And what people aren't realizing is the more that you keep doing that, because now you're crashing from the caffeine, the more you keep doing that, the more you're putting your body into a stress state. And the more chances you have of burnout, adrenal fatigue, You know, you're not going to have as much energy when you work out, and you're going to be like, why do I feel so tired all the time? Why do I feel so like winded? Those are the results of stress. And it doesn't have to be mental stress. It could be physical stress from what you're putting in your body.
Mm.
And so that's another thing, you know, so I would just say, you know, be holistic, be caring, treat yourself with kindness and with the right foods and, you know, the right things, the right information, so that you can be the best you can be every day. And then we're not perfect. I'm not perfect, but you know, just try. I think diet's very important. Very, very important.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. I mean, that's a lovely way to conclude an interview, sir. So if you would just like to share on the video, any for viewers watching, you own a Dojang, don't you? Am I correct in
I
saying
do.
that?
Yeah, I have a studio here in New Jersey. Yep. A small
Yeah, would you
little
like to
club.
just tell people what it is and where they could find you?
Sure. Yeah, so I have a studio in Red Bank, New Jersey. We're a small little group right now that trains, and it's for pretty serious people that want to just learn martial arts, learn self-defense, learn about holistic, right, meditation and training properly. We're in Red Bank. We're in a studio sharing with a yoga place called Even Flow, and we have classes weekly. And you can find us on Facebook, which is Shoreline Martial Arts, or you can find us on Instagram at Shoreline MA. I think it's Shoreline MA is my handle. I can't remember sometimes because I don't use it all the time. But you can find me there, or you can find me on my own Facebook page, and you can follow me and connect.
Thank you very much, sir, for your interview. And I
You're
hope
welcome.
all of you watching this take back some really, really useful and very interesting information for your martial arts journey.